Isn't she a beauty? Welcome to this week's video. This week, I wanted to show off my own personal Tyranid army. It's a little over 2,000 points at this point, and it's also my newest army. I've been collecting and building Tyranids since the newest edition just came out, the Leviathan box. I think a lot of people probably started there, and they just had some really great deals this year. It was pretty inexpensive for me to get to 2,000 points with Tyranids, all things considered. So in this video, I wanted to walk through each unit I had, show it off a little bit, tell a story, and I also wanted to explain my painting process and just some unusual facts of why I love the Tyranids so much and how they've become one of my favorite armies. So when I started Tyranids, like I said, I bought the Leviathan box. So that came with a few things you see in front of you. Obviously, that came with the Psychophage here. This guy is a pretty incredible unit and one of the first monsters that I painted. I'm pretty proud of the smoke effect I did on him. I kind of just winged it, and I think it turned out pretty good. And this was also the first time I decided to make the Salamanders, the Space Marine faction that they were attacking, and you'll see it in a lot of the other models. I have some dead salamanders scattered around. This was an easy choice for me because I do have a salamanders army, so it just kind of fit in right there with like these guys are in a constant battle on my shelf. Next to the Psychophage, I have the other monster that came in the Leviathan box, the Screamer Killer. I think this guy might have been what convinced me to get into Tyranids. He is an absolute beast, both on the table and looks-wise. I think he's really good. And ever since his points came down recently, he is even better. Beware of those spikes. They are actually sharp, and I've definitely pricked myself a couple of times. The HQ in the Leviathan box was the Winged Tyranid Prime here. This guy's kind of a weird one, and I've never really found a good spot to fill him in. I'm sure if I picked up some gargoyles, I'd have a good use for him, but as it stands now, I kind of just use him as a flying synapse machine. Other than that, his melee attacks are just okay, and he's really not always worth the points. But I think he's a pretty cool looking model, just not really sure what to do with him. One of the elite units that came out of the Leviathan box were the Von Ryan Leapers. These guys are awesome. I actually have 3 more of them unbuilt that I'm really excited to get started. The infiltrator ability is pretty powerful in my opinion, so being able to deploy these guys in the middle of the battlefield and kind of sneak around, do some damage, I think is really good. Also, the free heroic intervention they get is super nice. Only downside is half the time these guys are dead before I get to use them because they're typically the first target that my opponent is aiming to shoot since they're so far up the board. But if you go turn 1 and you get to use those guys, they can be pretty dangerous. Definitely excited to build more of those. The other more elite units in the Leviathan box were the Barbgaunts. These guys are pretty decent, but they don't hit super well against medium or heavy armor. Now, when they do hit, that -2 to movement and charges and advances is super nice, and it's kind of tricky. It'll catch your opponents up. They'll forget about it. You have to remind them. But as long as you remember, it can be pretty powerful. The Termagants, what's there to say? They are the most classic Tyranid unit. That's probably what you think of when you think of Tyranids. Not exactly anything to praise, but their sneaky movement shenanigans are pretty good. But really, it's just the sheer numbers that you have. I have 20 of these guys, and I have another 10 unpainted that I'm gonna probably add to the army because the more squishy targets you have, I think the better. The Neurogaunts, I'm still a little mixed on. Damage-wise, they do nothing. But tactically, I'm actually a pretty big fan of them because if they're within synapse, they give synapse, which can be really useful when organizing your army in your movement phase. It's just one less thing to worry about if you know that you have your Neurogaunts between 2 different units. It's really nice. I always try and keep everything in synapse range when I'm playing. Finally, from Leviathan box, we do have the Swarms. I only have 3 of these guys built up. I think I have more. These guys are my secondary point scorers. Super good coming from Deep Strike, doing exactly what you need them to do. Big fan of those guys. They don't do any damage, but they give you points. Very important. After I bought the Leviathan box, I actually purchased this Norn Emissary before anything else because I was just so excited about it. Right when it came out, I pretty much picked up this guy. I was hoping he'd be a little bit bigger, but I'm not too disappointed because the brains on him I think are so cool. This is one of the first models I tried taking really seriously. I mean, I put a lot of effort and time into this guy because I knew he'd be my centerpiece, and I'm pretty happy with the way he turned out. That being said, I think I did outdo myself with the Norn Assimilator, but we'll get there in a second. So after that guy, I went ahead and bought the Tyranid Holiday box, and that came with pretty much the other half of this entire army. That box included the Winged Hive Tyrant here, which I didn't expect his wings to really be quite as big as they are. Definitely surprised me. I'm a pretty big fan of this model though. It's just a bit difficult to store, but the free stratagem ability that he has is really good. His gun's not really anything to speak of, but I think he's just a cool model in general. Pretty scary guy on the table. Also in the holiday box, I got these 10 Gene Stealers here, and I really like these guys. These guys put out so many attacks, it gets pretty ridiculous. And they do have the scout ability, which you have to be kind of careful with. You don't want to put them too far up the board, but if you get them just enough to where they're going to be on an objective by the first turn, it's definitely useful. They were one of the harder units to paint though, because they have so many spiky bits. Slight change of scenery. There was a cricket in the garage last night, and I had to stop filming because this would not shut up. Cricket, my guy. My guy. So I'm joined by my carrying cases because I don't have the time to put all that stuff back out. But let's keep going through the list. The Neuro Tyrant was another one of the monsters I was extremely excited about when I got the Leviathan box. I think the blue brains on my Tyranids are one of my favorite things about my entire army. I'm so happy to put the blue brains on anything. And the two little side characters the Neuro Tyrant has hanging out with him are super nice. I like how it affects his ability and they're kind of like tokens for his ability. I think it's a really nice touch. Also, he's pretty good in game. Like his weapon is really decent and I did not expect that. So I'm really happy with the Neuro Tyrant. Probably my favorite HQ in my army. The Nero Lictor is another one of those units that I was super excited to get my hands on because of that super cool brain. He's quickly become one of the most meta and used units in the entire Tyranid list. I still only have one of them, but I do see how having 2 or 3 could be super useful. Forcing a unit into battle shock is really good, and the effects that he has when a unit becomes battle shocked is also super useful. But honestly, I just like him because of that brain. The Hormagaunts I love. I think I like them more than Termagaunts. The fact that they can advance and charge makes them so useful for movement. And while their attacks are only strength 3, you're getting so many of them, you're bound to hit something. I've liked the Tyrant Guard since I first checked out the Tyranids. I think they're one of the coolest looking models, one of the most unique looking alien models in the game. And I really like the damage you can do on their carapace. Tyranids are obviously a very squishy, easy to kill faction. So having a unit like Tyrant Guard, which make one of your HQs a little tougher, I think is a really good addition. I usually run him with the Neuro Tyrant. The Zoanthropes. This is one of the newest units I have. I haven't even played with these guys yet, so I really can't speak on how good they are in game. But like I've already said, I am a huge fan of anything that has to do with that brain, so I absolutely love the look of these guys. I'm pretty proud of how they turn out as well. I think I did a pretty good job with them. I can definitely tell that as I'm painting more Tyranid units, I'm kind of refining my paint scheme, and I've definitely gotten better in a few things. The Norn Assimilator is another one of my absolute favorites from this army. I made a whole video about painting this guy, so if you want to check it out, it's a pretty good watch. I'm really happy with how I did the green toxic injectors on him and any of the Tyranid monsters, as always. Last but not least, I have the Tyranifex, which is another one of the great monsters that I have. When I picked this guy up, I did not expect the gun that he came with to be so absolutely big. I love it. It reminds me of some of H.R. Geiger's work. It's very Alien from the movie Alien. Really big fan of the Tyranifex. And the gun's pretty good in game. I mean, I don't know if the Tyranids have a bigger gun, really. -4 AP, I think it's 18th strength. That thing is serious. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. That's my Tyranid army. I'm pretty happy with them. I think they've become my favorite army. I'm really happy with my paint scheme. I'm really happy with how they play. And most of all, I'm just really happy with how they look. Please leave any comments down below if there's any Tyranid models you guys think I should get. And thanks a lot for watching. Stay hungry.